Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we take a monumental stack of sources, filter out the noise, extract the truly essential insights, and hand it all over to you, the learner.
And today, we're doing something a little different.
Yeah, because we're not just summarizing the life of a globally famous actress.
No.
We're really analyzing what our sources reveal to be a meticulously engineered professional trajectory.
That's the key distinction, and it's fascinating, really. When you look at the comprehensive biographical profiles, the interviews, all the career milestones of Natalie Portman, you quickly realize this isn't a story of someone who stumbled into success.
Not at all.
We were looking at an architect. This is an individual who consciously managed two radically different, highly demanding careers, global Hollywood stardom and rigorous academic achievement.
And that's not even the whole story.
No, all while carving out this fiercely committed, non-negotiable space for high-profile political and social activism.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately, because the sheer, sustained discipline required to pull off that triple threat is frankly astonishing.
It really is.
Our mission today is to dive deep into the specific choices Portman made at every single turn. We want to understand the mechanism that allowed her to transition from a child star protege to an Oscar-winning director.
And we're focusing specifically on how she leveraged her profound intellectual curiosity, her relentless drive for creative control.
And, maybe most complexly, her deeply integrated public advocacy and identity.
Essentially, we're tracking the conscious pursuit of intelligence and depth over the path of least resistance in Hollywood.
And that one decision really shaped everything.
It shaped everything.
To understand the intentional framework of her career, we really have to start at the bedrock of her identity, which is one of profound duality, a theme that, like you just mentioned, it runs like a thread throughout her whole life. She was born Natalie Hirschlag on June 9, 1981, in Jerusalem, specifically at the Hadassah Medical Center on Mount Scopus, to Jewish parents.
And that heritage is so layered with global history and, immense pressure. Her father, Avner Hirschlag, was an Israeli-born gynecologist. Her mother, Shelley Stevens, was an Ohio-born artist.
And the sources really emphasize this. She holds dual citizenship in Israel and the United States.
But the family narrative goes much deeper than just that.
It's a story rooted in displacement and survival. On her father's side, her grandparents emigrated from Poland in the 1930s.
Right, so they narrowly escaped the imminent catastrophe of the Holocaust.
But tragically, her grandfather's remaining family was killed at Auschwitz. That kind of history, a history of vigilance and flight, it has to permeate the family structure.
It has to. And on her paternal grandmother's side, and this is the woman whose maiden name she would eventually adopt, there's a different kind of resilience. She was originally from Romania and actually served as a spy for the British during World War II. So, when you grew up with stories of ancestors who were Holocaust survivors and secret agents, you inherit a different perception of danger, of resilience, and, the necessity of carefully managed identities.
Which makes a lot of sense. The family migrated to the U.S. when Natalie was 3, eventually settling in Sauset, Long Island, after a few brief periods in Washington, D.C. and Connecticut.
And here's a detail that often gets overlooked. Despite her flawless English, her native language is Hebrew.
So how does that cultural and linguistic layering, learning to navigate two distinct cultures from the age of 3, how does that inform her worldview and her later career flexibility?
Well, it creates an inherently translational perspective. Someone who is natively fluent in Hebrew but operates professionally in English has this innate ability to shift modes, to think contextually.
And to approach material through multiple cultural lenses.
Exactly. We see this manifested years later when she insists on making a Hebrew language film, A Tale of Love and Darkness. This early life really set the stage for someone who is going to consciously direct her professional path, rather than letting it be dictated by chance.
And that conscious direction starts, astonishingly early.
It really does.
The oft-repeated story is that at age 10, she was spotted by a Revlon agent while eating pizza in a restaurant.
And most kids or their parents would jump at a modeling contract, right?
Of course. But she declined the offer.
Instead, she used the interaction to secure an acting agent at 10 years old.
That's the critical juncture right there.
It is. She rejected passive modeling, which focuses solely on physical presentation, for the active intellectual craft of acting. It showed an early understanding that she wanted agency over her narrative, not just her image.
And this led pretty quickly to her first tentative theatrical roles, including being an understudy.
And this is a great piece of trivia, alongside Britney Spears.
Right, in the 1992 off-Broadway musical Ruthless.
Which is amazing.
That brings us to the breakthrough, the role that cemented her name globally at just 12 years old. Matilda in Luc Besson's 1994 film Léon, The Professional.
And this is also where she establishes that public boundary, adopting her paternal grandmother's maiden name, Portman, as her stage name.
It's like a psychological firewall.
That's a great way to put it. It's a layer of protection between the public figure and her private academic identity, Natalie Portman.
But the making of Léon itself was a real test of parental and personal boundaries. The original script contained scenes that were, well, they were pretty explicit.
Yeah, involving sexual content and scenes where Matilda, her character, committed murder.
And her parents, based on what the sources say, were highly cautious.
Oh, very cautious. They only agreed to the role after director Luc Besson agreed to remove the nudity and any scenes of her character actually committing a killing.
But even with those changes...
Even with those concessions, her mother, Shelley, was reportedly still displeased with some of the finished film's sexual twists and turns.
Noting they weren't in the script they'd approved.
Exactly. And that early experience with the unexpected sexualization of her young character had immediate, profound implications for all of her future role choices.
So after Léon and the subsequent success of Beautiful Girls in 1996, the offers started pouring in. But they often centered on this theme of the sexualized youngster. She later said this experience genuinely scared her and made her reluctant to do sexy stuff.
Well, it wasn't just discomfort, it was strategic self-preservation. She understood the dangerous cultural niche she was being put into.
She saw the trap.
She saw it so clearly. She articulated it perfectly, noting that young girls often become fantasy objects for men, and especially this idealized purity combined with the fertility of youth.
And she chose to evade it, which must have required turning down some massive opportunity.
Oh, huge. She dropped out of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet in 1996 because the studio felt she was too young for the emotional demands.
And perhaps more tellingly, she turned down the lead role in the film adaptation of Lolita.
Just turned it down flat because of the excessive sexual content.
Rejecting Lolita was arguably a career-defining act of resistance.
I think so. It sent a clear signal to Hollywood that her boundaries were non-negotiable, even when millions of dollars in prestige were on the table. It cemented her identity as someone who prioritized personal safety and narrative integrity over guaranteed stardom.
And so she then dedicated herself to material that reflected her intellectual and emotional depth.
Right, specifically starring in the Broadway revival of The Diary of Anne Frank from 1997 to 1998. The preparation alone was immense.
Yeah, she visited the Anne Frank house and even met Millepied, the woman who preserved the diary.
And you have to remember, given her family's own history with the Holocaust, this must have been incredibly emotionally draining.
Absolutely. But what's often overlooked is the logistical rigor required.
I mean, she was performing nightly in a major Broadway revival while simultaneously attending Syosset High School during the day.
That level of compartmentalization and discipline really becomes the defining feature of her life as she enters adulthood.
Without a doubt.
That foundation of rigor and calculated career choice becomes the central focus as we transition into the next period of her life.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
During her high school years, starting in 1997, she filmed her first massive global franchise role, Padme Amidala in Star Wars. Episode I, The Phantom Menace.
And this is the moment where the intellectual really meets the blockbuster. The Phantom Menace, released in 1999, was, at the time, the second highest-grossing film of all time.
It pulled in over $900 million globally.
Right, and that kind of success typically dictates an immediate pivot to full-time, high-speed Hollywood saturation.
But not for her. She approached even the space opera with the seriousness of, like, a history major. She didn't just show up.
No, she studied the original trilogy, worked extensively with George Lucas on developing her accent and mannerisms, and she consciously drew inspiration from classic, powerful actresses like Lauren Bacall, Audrey Hepburn, and Katharine Hepburn.
She was trying to build a real character with substance in what was essentially a CGI spectacle.
And here is the one fact that I think encapsulates her priorities more than anything else.
I think I know what you're going to say.
When The Phantom Menace premiered, a film that made her recognizable worldwide, she missed it.
She missed her own premiere.
She was absent from the global debut of one of the biggest films ever made because she was home studying for her high school finals.
That is genuinely astounding. It's such a powerful message to send to the industry. My education comes first.
That dedication wasn't just in the humanities. Before she graduated from Syosset High in 1999, she co-authored a science paper,
Yeah, a simple method to demonstrate the enzymatic production of hydrogen from sugar.
which was entered in the prestigious Intel Science Talent Search. So she was not performing a starlet's version of academia.
No, this was legitimate, complex work in chemistry and biology.
And this commitment was reinforced immediately after graduation when she made the definitive choice to pursue higher education, enrolling at Harvard University from 1999 to 2003 for a bachelor's degree in psychology.
And during this 4-year period, she basically put her acting career on hold.
She severely curtailed it, yeah, only agreeing to film the remaining Star Wars prequels during her summer breaks.
And the quote she famously gave at the time, it really sums up her entire philosophy.
It's the mission statement for her career, isn't it? I don't care if college ruins my career. I'd rather be smart than a movie star.
In Hollywood terms, that was a radical declaration of independence. She was choosing knowledge capital over financial capital at the absolute peak of her early fame.
But her time at Harvard was far from the typical celebrity attends college story. She was deeply involved in some pretty complex research.
Yeah, she was.
Absolutely. The rigor was undeniable. She took advanced courses in Hebrew literature, which, connected back to her native language and cultural roots, and she studied neurobiology.
And she even contributed to a published scientific study on memory.
That's right. It was titled Frontal Lobe Activation During Object Permanence in Infants and Adults.
So, for the learner who might not be familiar with that specific area of psychology, can you give us a quick breakdown of why contributing to a study on object permanence is such a significant indicator of her academic depth?
Of course. So object permanence is this foundational concept in cognitive psychology, first described by Piaget. It's basically a child's understanding that objects continue to exist even when they can't see them or touch them.
Right.
The study she contributed to wasn't just observing behavior. It was using sophisticated imaging technology to track frontal lobe activation, the actual brain activity, to understand the neural pathways behind it.
So this is highly technical neurobiological research.
Exactly. It's not an easy elective. It requires genuine dedication to methodology and data analysis.
And her political engagement was just as serious. She also served as Alan Dershowitz's research assistant for his book, The Case for Israel.
That's critical. It shows she wasn't insulating herself in an academic bubble. She was using her university resources to engage with highly charged political subjects. She was using Harvard as a resource to intellectualize her Jewish and Israeli identity, really preparing her for the advocacy she would undertake later.
But then, after 4 years of prioritizing intellect, she returned to Hollywood, and it was a shock.
A real shock. She described the period immediately following her Harvard graduation as the most difficult time in her life. She struggled to find work.
And felt heavily criticized, especially for her performances in the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah, which were maybe a bit more stylized, a bit wooden. It was almost like Hollywood was punishing her for taking time off.
It was a moment of vulnerability.
For sure. The industry often assumes if you step away, you aren't serious or you've lost your commercial edge. It was actually the legendary director Mike Nichols who stepped in.
He mentored her.
He did. He provided mentorship and helped her secure a key role in the 2003 film Cold Mountain, which helped her regain her footing and confidence.
And that experience seems to have propelled her into choosing projects that really challenge standard Hollywood narratives. In 2004, she starred in Garden State,
A beloved independent film.
playing a quirky, free-spirited girl suffering from epilepsy. But the role itself became a huge topic of cultural discussion later on.
It did. That character was later cited as a prime textbook example of the manic pixie dream girl trope.
Right, the shallow, eccentric female character whose only purpose is to teach a brooding male protagonist how to enjoy life.
And what's remarkable is her reaction to this retrospective critique. She was reportedly genuinely upset when she realized she had contributed to perpetuating that stereotype.
That shows an enormous level of self-awareness.
It's rare. To be critically successful in a role and then later acknowledge that the character contributed to a shallow gendered trope is, well, it reflects her scholar's impulse to critique cultural norms, even though she benefited from.
But in the same year, she took a major step toward mature adult roles with Closer.
Right, playing a mysterious stripper. A role that earned her a Golden Globe and her first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress.
This was her first overtly sexually charged adult role, but those boundaries she established earlier, they remained firm.
Absolutely. She insisted on removing the original nude scenes from the script, arguing they were inessential to the narrative.
Which is such a small detail, but it speaks volumes. She was finally embracing complex adult content, but only on her own terms.
Maintaining creative control over her body and its depiction.
Following that, she made two choices that really solidified her status as an intellectual artist. V for Vendetta in 2005 and filming Free Zone in Israel.
Let's start with V for Vendetta, a powerful political thriller based on the graphic novel. She was drawn to it for its provocative, anti-authoritarian themes.
And for one torture scene, she had her head shaved on camera.
Which she didn't view as a gimmick, but as an explicit opportunity to shed vanity, a significant act for a major female star. And this dedication won her the Saturn Award for Best Actress.
At the same time, she's fulfilling her commitment to intellectual growth.
Right. While shooting the Israeli drama Free Zone in 2005, she spent 6 months taking graduate courses at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, focusing on the anthropology of violence and Middle Eastern studies.
So she's filming a drama set in the Middle East and simultaneously using her time there to deepen her academic understanding of the region's political complexities.
Exactly. She remarked that living and studying in Israel during that time felt really beautiful, linking her heritage, her academic pursuit, and her career once again in perfect synchronicity. The scholar and the superstar were fully integrated.
Yeah.
That unique calibration of intellectual rigor and professional discipline really set the stage for what many consider the apex of her acting career.
Which has to be Darren Aronofsky's psychological thriller, Black Swan, in 2010.
This role wasn't just demanding, it was transformative. To play the obsessive ballerina, she underwent a grueling 6-month training regimen.
We are talking 5 to 8 hours of physical training daily.
Daily. And she lost 20 pounds, or 9 kilograms. This wasn't merely preparation. It was intense physical and mental conditioning that bordered on method acting through endurance.
And that commitment translated into massive success. The film was a genuine sleeper hit, generating $329 million globally on a modest $13 million budget.
And it swept the major awards. It earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, a BAFTA, a Golden Globe, and a SAG Award.
It was a moment of true validation for that choice she made back in 1999 to prioritize depth.
For sure. However, the subsequent focus was complicated by controversy.
Yes, the debate surrounding her dance double, Sarah Lane.
Right. Lane claimed publicly that Portman performed only about 5% of the full-body shots, suggesting the public perceived an extreme physical transformation that wasn't entirely accurate.
And this became a highly charged conversation about performance versus perception in Hollywood.
It did. Director Aronofsky immediately countered this, staunchly insisting that Portman performed 80% of the on-screen dancing, characterizing Lane's claims as exaggerated.
So the critical takeaway here for the learner is that even at the peak of her success, the narrative surrounding her work was constantly being analyzed.
Did she truly earn the physical transformation, or was it studio trickery? It added another layer of scrutiny to her dedication.
Following that intense, exhausting experience, she made another tactical choice, which, again, confirms her deliberate career management.
Right. She served as executive producer and starred in the commercially successful romantic comedy No Strings Attached in 2011.
Labeling it a much-needed palate cleanser, she was actively managing her own mental and emotional workload.
And then came the entry into the superhero realm, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
A move that could easily be viewed as purely commercial.
But again, she approached it with scholarly curiosity. When she joined the MCU as Jane Foster in Thor, she helped develop her character by actively researching real-life female scientists.
Like Rosalind Franklin, who was critical in the discovery of DNA structure but often overlooked. She was always trying to ground commercial fiction in intellectual reality.
And this provided immense financial stability. Thor. The Dark World in 2013 grossed over $644 million.
Making it the 10th highest-grossing film of that year. Her star power was such that in 2012, Forbes named her the most bankable star in Hollywood.
So she had successfully synthesized critical prestige, intellectual seriousness, and massive commercial viability.
Her return to the MCU in 2022 for Thor, Love and Thunder as Mighty Thor, was also a conscious choice.
Yeah. We understand she was swayed by director Taika Waititi's pitch, which promised a more adventurous and funny portrayal of Jane Foster.
Indicating that she was now demanding better, more complex character arcs even within franchise filmmaking.
The balance continued with her deep immersion in biographical work, showcasing her meticulous research skills again. Her portrayal of Jacqueline Kennedy in Jackie in 2016 was another masterclass in preparation.
Oh, absolutely. She dove into videos, books, audio tapes, specifically focusing on adopting Kennedy's unique, breathy speaking style, a highly difficult vocal challenge.
And that performance earned her a third Academy Award nomination and solidified her reputation as an actress willing to go the extreme length for character authenticity.
But now we have to turn to the ultimate sign of creative control.
Moving behind the camera.
Exactly. She didn't just want to interpret stories, she wanted to choose and structure them.
The foundation was laid pretty early. She launched her production company, Handsome Charlie Films, in 2008.
And directed her short film debut, Eve, that same year, which was significant enough to open the Venice Film Festival short film screenings.
But the real statement, the definitive assertion of her creative authority, was her feature directorial debut, A Tale of Love and Darkness, in 2015.
A Hebrew-language biographical drama based on Amos Oz's novel, set against the backdrop of the establishment of Israel.
She wore all the hats: star, producer, co-writer, and director.
What this project reveals is an incredible patience and commitment to authenticity.
The sources indicate she postponed the project for a full decade,
A decade.
waiting until she was mature enough to convincingly play the complex role of a mother in the narrative. That is an extremely rare example of a Hollywood star prioritizing artistic timing over immediate output.
The production also had an interesting political footnote. The film received partial funding from the rightist Israeli government,
which led her to make a revealing observation about gender roles in the film industry across the two countries.
Right. She noted that she actually found it easier to be a female director in Israel than in the U.S.
She linked this directly to Israeli culture, specifically the compulsory military service in the IDF, where Israeli men grow up accustomed to receiving orders from female commanders and officers.
She suggested this cultural norm made them far more accepting of female authority figures on a film set than in the traditionally male-dominated American industry.
It's a truly specific cultural insight that only someone with her background could offer.
And her production ambition continues to grow. In 2021, she co-founded a new company, Mountain, with Sophie Mass,
and secured a lucrative first-look deal with Apple TV Plus Day.
So they are now driving major projects.
Most recently, they produced and starred in May, December, where Portman plays an actress researching a morally ambiguous character, a meta role that almost comments on her own career practice of research and immersion.
And that role, too, earned her a Golden Globe nomination.
Right. And the company also produced the HBO documentary series Angel City, which directly feeds into her parallel business and activism interests in professional sports.
Which seamlessly brings us to the segment of her identity that is as meticulously cultivated as her film choices, her deep and consistent advocacy work.
Yeah, her commitment to animal and environmental rights has roots that go back to early childhood.
The origin of her vegetarianism at age 8 is it's so visceral and impactful. She attended a medical conference with her gynecologist's father, and during a demonstration, she witnessed laser surgery being performed on a chicken.
And for an 8-year-old, that was a profoundly disturbing experience that immediately crystallized her views on animal welfare. It wasn't a philosophical choice at first.
No, it was a physical, emotional reaction.
She later deepened that commitment significantly. She was a vegetarian for years, but converted to full veganism in 2009.
After reading Jonathan Safran Foer's influential book, Eating Animals.
And true to form, she didn't just read the book and change her diet. She leveraged her platform to amplify the message.
She went on to produce a documentary film of the same title, ensuring her personal conviction translated directly into cultural conversation.
And this commitment is absolute. It impacts her business decisions. She refuses to wear animal products.
And as far back as 2007, she launched her own brand of animal-friendly footwear.
Her environmental work, too, started young. She was part of an environmental song and dance troupe called World Patrol Kids.
And later, in 2007, she traveled to Rwanda for the documentary Gorillas on the Brink, showing global engagement on conservation.
Her scope then expanded rapidly beyond environmentalism into global human rights and economic empowerment.
Specifically microfinance.
Yes. She became the ambassador of hope for FINSA International, an organization dedicated to promoting microlending for women-owned businesses in the developing world.
Between 2004 and 2005, she undertook extensive field trips for this cause, visiting Uganda, Guatemala, and Ecuador.
And for the learner, it's important to clarify what microlending is and why it's such a strategic choice for impactful celebrity advocacy.
Right.
Microfinance is the practice of providing small loans, often just a few $100s, to people in poverty, particularly women, who lack access to traditional banking services.
And these loans are used to start or expand small enterprises, like selling produce or making crafts.
Creating self-sufficiency rather than reliance on perpetual charity.
And the sources confirm her academic training gave her instant credibility in this complex field.
It did. Fareed Zakaria of PBS, a highly respected geopolitical commentator, was so impressed during an interview segment on microfinance that he included it, even though he admitted being wary of celebrities with fashionable causes.
He included her segment because he felt she really knew her stuff.
That endorsement is crucial. It proved that her Harvard education wasn't just a vanity project. It was a foundational tool that provided her with the ability to discuss complex global economic issues credibly.
It forced people to take her activism seriously.
Absolutely. She then utilized this credibility, visiting multiple university campuses in 2007, including Harvard, Stanford, and Columbia, to encourage students to join Village Banking Campaign. She was teaching, not just campaigning.
And her commitment to women's empowerment globally is long-standing. In 2011, she became an ambassador for WE Charity,
spearheading the Power of a Girl campaign to fundraise for all girl schools in Kenya.
When we look at her political engagement closer to home, her alignment is firmly with the Democratic Party, having campaigned for John Kerry and actively supporting Barack Obama in both 2008 and 2012.
But her most raw, personal, and powerful activism surfaced during the Time's Up and Me Too movements.
She donated $50,000 to Time's Up in 2018 and then delivered an explosive speech at the 2018 Women's March in Los Angeles.
And this speech directly connected her childhood experience to the adult fight for bodily autonomy.
This is a devastating moment in her public career.
It is. She detailed what she courageously termed the sexual terrorism she experienced at age 13 following the release of Léon, the Professional.
Revealing that her first fan letter was a detailed rape fantasy from an adult man.
And worse, that a local radio station ran a countdown clock to her 18th birthday.
That experience just... It explains in painful detail the extreme reluctance she felt about doing sexy stuff as a teenager. It connects directly back to her rejection of Lolita and her insistence on boundaries in Closer.
Exactly. She realized early on that success in Hollywood often comes with an assumed sense of entitlement from the public, making her feel unsafe and leading men to feel entitled to discuss and objectify my body.
So her activism, therefore, it's not a sudden celebrity trend.
Not at all. It is the culmination of decades spent fighting for personal and professional boundaries.
She continues to push politically sensitive boundaries. In 2020, at the height of the social justice movement, she endorsed the Defund the Police movement.
And created a public service announcement for Justice LA regarding health conditions in LA County jails during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So now we have to turn to the most complex and nuanced aspect of her public identity, her relationship with Israel.
Right. On the one hand, Haaretz described her as an outspoken supporter, noting she raised funds after the 2006 Lebanon war.
But on the other hand, she perfectly encapsulates her critical stance by saying her relationship with Israel is like family. You love it more than anything else in the world, and you're also more critical of it than anything else in the world.
And that internal conflict came to a very dramatic head in 2018.
Yes. In 2018, she was awarded the highly prestigious Genesis Prize, often called the Jewish Nobel, which included a substantial $2 million award.
And in April of that year, she stunned the world by announcing she would not attend the ceremony, citing recent events in Israel.
This decision was immediately understood by most observers to be a direct response to the Gaza border protests, during which a high number of Palestinian protesters were killed or wounded by Israeli forces.
And the backlash against her was swift and intense.
Oh, it was severe. Israeli politicians accused her of supporting the anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, or BDS.
And one Knesset member even publicly called for her Israeli citizenship to be revoked.
This forced a carefully worded, essential clarification from Portman.
Right, because she made it absolutely clear that she does not endorse the BDS movement.
Her reason for backing out was purely political neutrality.
Exactly. She did not want her presence to appear as an endorsement of then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was scheduled to speak at the ceremony.
She framed her protest as a moral obligation rooted in her core beliefs.
She did. She stated explicitly that the mistreatment of those suffering from today's atrocities is not in line with my Jewish values. She argued that caring deeply about Israel compels her to stand up against violence, corruption, inequality, and impulsive power.
It was a subtle but profound distinction. Criticizing the government is not the same as rejecting the country's existence.
And she continued this critical stance later in 2018, describing the highly controversial passing of the nation-state bill as racist, and there's nothing else to say about that.
For context, that bill enshrined the right to national self-determination as unique to the Jewish people, a measure critics argued officially marginalized Israel's non-Jewish minorities.
Specifically the Arab population. So this history makes her recent advocacy in 2023 even more significant.
Following the horrific Hamas attacks, she immediately condemned their actions, called for the release of hostages, and publicized fundraising efforts for Dror Israel to aid children affected near the Gaza border.
And she also participated in the March for the Republic and against anti-Semitism in Paris. This demonstrates a consistent, critical, yet unwavering commitment to the safety and moral integrity of her people, regardless of the political leadership.
Her identity is constantly being integrated into and tested by current events.
Always.
So let's shift gears a little and examine how she has applied her architect mindset and activist principles to the business world.
Right, specifically through her involvement with Angel City FC in the National Women's Soccer League.
This is a fascinating way to exert influence beyond traditional media.
It is the perfect marriage of her advocacy and business acumen. She is a co-founder and owner of Angel City FC, which began play in 2022.
And the most critical element is the ownership structure, right?
It is. It is an almost entirely female ownership group, including major celebrity investors and her producing partner, Sophie Mass.
So what's the significance of choosing the NWSL and this specific female-led structure?
Well, it's a direct application of her feminist and empowerment activism to a professional sports enterprise. They are not just running a team. They're intentionally shifting the culture of professional football.
Ensuring women are financially and creatively empowered at the highest level of ownership.
Exactly. It turns a business venture into a political and cultural statement about representation and economic power.
She also maintains powerful visibility through major endorsements, which often puts her at the intersection of glamour and ethical scrutiny.
For sure. She has been a longtime ambassador for Dior since signing on in 2010, serving as the face of the Miss Dior fragrance.
And that commercial relationship provides a perfect example of the scrutiny she operates under.
It does. In 2012, a Dior ad featuring her for mascara was banned by Britain's Advertising Standards Authority, or ASA, after a competitor lodged a complaint.
The ASA ruled that the ad had been post-produced to the extent that it misleadingly exaggerated the likely effects of the product.
So even in the highly polished world of commercial endorsement, her image is subject to intense, regulated scrutiny.
Finally, let's touch upon the personal milestones that run parallel to her career evolution, which reflect her deep curiosity. Beyond English and Hebrew, the sources indicate she speaks French, German, Japanese, and Arabic to various degrees.
Which just reinforces that early linguistic curiosity established in her childhood.
Her personal life centered for many years on French dancer and choreographer Benjamin Millepied,
whom she met while working on Black Swan in 2009.
They married in a Jewish ceremony in Big Sur, California in 2012 and have 2 children together.
And the sources reveal a deep cultural integration here, too. They relocated to Paris in 2014 when Millepied was appointed director of dance at the Paris Opera Ballet.
And that same year, Millepied began the conversion process to Judaism, tying his life further into her core identity.
But tragically, the end of that chapter became public just recently.
Yeah.
After quietly separating in early 2023, amid unaddressed reports of an extramarital affair by Millepied, the divorce was finalized on March 8, 2024.
This marks a profound personal transition that occurred while she simultaneously continued her intense professional output and advocacy work.
Incredible balancing act.
So, the learner, as we synthesize this incredibly complex body of work, Natalie Portman's life and career really serve as a powerful case study in conscious construction. We've established 3 core defining themes.
First, the deliberate, radical choice of intellectual growth over immediate stardom. Her Harvard era, where she prioritized neurobiology and political research, provided the foundational credibility that later validated her global activism.
Yeah, earning respect from figures like Fareed Zakaria.
Exactly.
Second, the strategic shift to production and directing. She wasn't content merely to be interpreted. She took control of the narratives she participates in.
Culminating in founding Mountain A and delaying her passion project, A Tale of Love and Darkness, for a decade to ensure its authenticity.
And third, the complex, integrated nature of her identity. She continuously used her platform for robust social and political advocacy.
From leading the microfinance movement and animal rights to engaging in critical, principled dialogue about Israeli governance, always grounding her critique in deeply held Jewish values, she is the consummate critical insider.
And just to remind you of the staggering scale of her achievement, we are discussing a highly decorated artist with an Academy Award, a BAFTA, 2 Golden Globes,
and roles that span culture-defining franchises like Star Wars and the MCU, alongside intensely rigorous dramatic work in Closer, V for Vendetta, Black Swan, and Jackie.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider.
Natalie Portman intentionally sought out spaces, academia, directing, social causes, NWSL ownership, where she could exercise deep influence and serious critique. So the question is, how does maintaining a highly visible public identity that is simultaneously a commercial powerhouse, the MCU and Dior, and a fierce critic of power structures and gender norms, how does that change the definition of what long-term success and genuine political influence looks like in Hollywood today?